what you call the vulnerability hangover, or what one could call going to capacity or stretching right past capacity, is very much like if you go to the gym. If I take you to the gym and you've never worked out and I make you do fairly heavy weights, you are going to be so sore, right? And so both in expansive sexual experience and in practice, you will have moments of soreness, and if it's an area of where you opened that you don't have muscle, so to speak, then the soreness will be stronger. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that you need to put it in the perspective so you can manage it. Because if we would never be sore in a workout, we'd never work out, obviously. And it's very clear when when your muscles are sore, you can go, oh, I overdid it a bit, I'm injured. But that's highly unlikely, typically, because you stop usually, right? What typically happens is you're just really sore. Your body has to metabolize the lactic acid and all of that, and then you typically work out again, and then it gets a bit less, and then eventually you have muscle. The same is true for these practices, where if you do them well, which clearly you did, the next day you'll feel sore, psychoemotionally sore, so to speak, or psychosexually sore if it's a sexual experience, even though this falls into the same category of opening beyond your. So it's not that you've done too much, it's that you need to up your aftercare. So meaning if you know, that's the same with workouts, right? If you know you've really stretched your body, then after a workout you typically do things to mitigate that, right? An ice bath or a massage or a hot bath or a sauna. And it's the same with this. If you feel like you're weepy and all of that, that's perfectly fine. But in an ideal world, aren't you going to the beach? Perfect. So in an ideal world, you'd be going to the beach, putting your body in water, or having a bath, spending some time alone. This is true for all of you. Thank you actually for saying that. You'll get to the airport and you're like, fuck! It's super intense when you're suddenly dealing with what's happening, because we gently step down here, and on the first night everybody's on their computers. By the last night nobody's on their computers, because you regain the perspective of what's important in your life versus what you think is important. So if you know that you're sensitive, and if you know that these things happen, you just have to do a bit of extra aftercare. And so psychosexual emotional aftercare is water, internal as well as external. If you're very sensitive, you could consider either a little bit of arnica, like arnica drops, or propolis. Good. You might do a little bit of that, and then just do a bit of nonlinear, move your body, and allow the soreness to subside without attaching some mental story to it. Because it doesn't actually have a mental story. It's often that weepiness is just the heart being a bit more open than usual. Now, in a sexual situation, what felt like a panic attack is probably the feeling of having opened so much and not feeling all the way safe, right? And that's a good indication of choice of partner, right? Which you have made that choice to not be with that partner. And that is a good indication, unless you have some pre-existing trauma. If you don't have pre-existing trauma around sexual experiences, if you just open a lot and then you go, it either means that your partner didn't provide proper aftercare, or you have doubts on something, or there's something not quite right. And then you can shore that up by saying, look, when we have an experience like that, I will need a little bit of extra reassurance, or I need to be held a bit, or I need a morning cuddle, or whatever, right? I need to be told how good it was, or whatever, right? Like the things that make you feel like a little bit less like you pun intended, you hung your naked ass out of the window for everyone to see, because that's what it feels like, right? So those are just things to consider, but it doesn't necessarily mean you did too much. It just means you did enough for your system to go, oh, we are at capacity and now we're expanding capacity. Now, how you would know that you've done too much is your system is fried for weeks on end. But I don't think I ever have taught in a way that that would happen, so I'm not worried about that. Yeah. Thank you. Anything else? Now is your last chance, and then we'll do some more practice, actually. The way the brain works, right, is that essentially everything we know, physical, emotional, mental patterns, is a pretty much a neurological pathway. And on that neurological pathway, all the information needed for that behavior or experience is stored. And so because of the way the brain functions, right, everything has to be learned through repetition, other than the most basic, functions of you pop out of your mother, you can scream and suck, right? That's pretty much, and swallow. But everything else gets learned over time. And so your father wound is intricately woven into a lot of behaviors. And so those behaviors are not being relearned because it's useless to relearn a behavior that you've had before for the brain, right? The brain goes, we've done this, we're not going to spend any energy on this. So if you ever relearn a pattern, which some people do for whatever reason, you have to really work very, very hard to override the old pattern, because the brain always wants to go back to what's already there. So when it comes to, so there's a distinction to be made, one of which is your father wound, meaning the way you were loved or weren't loved, and the way you perceived how you were loved and weren't loved, is woven into pretty much all early childhood experience. Yeah, so it's not going anywhere. Yeah. It's also the reason you're successful in certain things and intuitive in other things, and it's the fabric of who you are. But specific behaviors, let's say you don't trust a certain kind of a man, let's say, so then specific behaviors you can atrophy to the point that they're no longer active. So, but that doesn't mean the fabric has changed, but the specific thing. So you can learn, for instance, let's say, I don't know, your partner would like to support you in something, and you go automatically, no, I can do it myself. You can learn to go, thanks, yes, that would be great, right? And that takes a bit of time because the knee-jerk will be, no, and then you'll have to go, yes, thank you, that would be wonderful, right? And so when you do that, the old pattern, which is a specific thing, becomes less and less and less accessed. So the less access the pattern gets, it's like a path that overgrows. It never completely goes away, but it's not the active pathway, and you can build a new pathway. You can definitely work with it. So what you would do is you would listen to the voice of that pattern. It has a voice, right? It has a sentence, or a few sentences, right? So you take those sentences and you write them down, and then you rephrase each of those sentences into the opposite. And then you essentially carry, a little index card or on your phone or wherever, those sentences with you. And anytime you hear one of those, you rephrase it right there. You stop what you're doing, you rephrase it right there, then you move on. So, good old-fashioned behavior modification always does the trick. If you move your body while you're doing it, even better. Yeah. Well, that's personal, right? So an example would be, I don't want her to have to give her examples, so I'm making one up. I have one. Oh, fuck me, now I have to do this by myself again. Right? That's a classic one, that I have, which is a version of that. And so I would, I would have to go, No, you don't. You have all the support you need. You just have to actually delegate this to someone, right? And then that's that, right? Do I still have to do it on occasion? Yes. Do I sometimes have to do shit by myself? Yes. But the suffering around it is entirely unnecessary, right? We all have those. So you find the voice of the thing that is still there, you know. So, and there's nothing you can do about those things. It's not even that your parents necessarily meant badly. Well, yes, maybe some more than others. My father fell off the back of the house into the basement staircase and was in an ICU for 6 months. So not exactly his fault, but it meant that I went from being, you know, a very dearly loved child to in the care of my neighbors, you know, overnight, because my mother had to be there because they thought he was going to die, and he was gone, and my sister was 6 months old, so you can imagine the set of circumstances, right? So me, little 5-year-old, you know, just started school, was essentially at the neighbors. It's nobody's fault, but it creates a pattern of self-sufficiency, which is a really good pattern. But of course, it means that my muscle of asking for help had to be really developed. So yeah, so clearly I have repatterned now that I'm thinking about it. In the olden days, I would have, you know, with great drama, gotten dressed again and dragged myself up to get the water, and then felt very unsupported and, you know, sorry for myself and no one is here to care for me. But so clearly I was able to redo this. Whew. So yes, so that's how you do it. Yeah, it's a voice and you can deal with the voice. Yeah. I would be very careful with that. And here's why. There's whole strains of people, mostly the super spiritual people, who somehow think that you bring on diseases, you know, and so hence you should be able to also get rid of them, right? And then those same kind of people look at somebody who got some cancer or something and goes, oh, you probably thought some bad thoughts, you know, and you see that, right? You see how people get treated. You know, they come down with some heinous form of cancer and it's like, well, where in your life are you avoiding something? It's like, you know, people do that. Yeah. So you want to be careful that you don't get into that mindset, because it's never just one thing. Are there psychosomatic, let's say, contributors? Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Are there only psychosomatic contributors? Not very likely, and even if there were, they're outside of your control, right? Meaning you are not the master of your nervous system, you're not the master of your body does shit. So even if you have a psychosomatic thing that causes it, you still are not causing that, because it's a very intricate process on how the body deals with certain factors, right? So it's not as simple as, well, think nicer and you will not have urinary tract infections. But what you can do, and this is something that can be done for all kinds of things, is you can journal. Is it at the same time each month, or is it random? Is it connected with sex or without, or connected with sex? Well, whenever you have somebody else's... Well, okay, I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to stop the recording, so this is not... Yeah. Well, I don't discount that that's true, by the way, right? I do think that ultimately our body is built for homeostasis. That's what we're built for, right? Our nervous system is built for homeostasis. Our body is built for homeostasis. So ultimately, the body can right itself in many, many cases. We know that belief and faith have a huge influence on homeostasis, right? There's stuff where they have prayed for people from afar, and it's actually made a difference. So we do know that in the circuitry of mirror neurons and you know, whatever, the unconscious and the collective unconscious. There's all kinds of things that we don't know about. It is certainly true that your mindset can make a big difference. So I'm not discounting that. But I don't think the differentiation I'm trying to make is, if you can support your system in healing with all that means, mindset, saying the right things, doing the right things, prayer, it can only help. But I think it's very, very important to not make yourself responsible for that healing, because you're gonna lose. That's like me going, relax already, nervous system, right? Like, my nervous system can relax, but me pushing it to relax is not going to relax it. So that's why I'm saying I would be very careful. Now, I know people who have done a lot of Joe Dispenza stuff and swear by it and think it's the best thing ever and have been helped by it, but, you know, not everything can be helped. And the thing to also remember is, this is something hard for humans to remember, is these things are out of our control. Our day of departure, so to speak, is completely out of our control. I mean, we can be healthy and do everything we can, but when we go, we go. And how we go is not our choice either. And so to assume we know, you know, how it's going to go is going to set us up for a lot of failure. And at the same time, you definitely want to optimize what you can. But yes, the horrible feeling of, oh, I didn't do this well enough. There's lots of people, you know, who essentially teach shit that doesn't work. But they're so certain about it that everybody believes. I'm not saying Joe Dispenza that, but there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in the relational space, right? People who've never offered a single session of couples therapy one-on-one with people, but have online programs out there teaching relationship, and they're so certain that this works. And all of that stuff, right? Or tantric stuff. Never actually worked with people, but have good marketing and some ideas, typically ideas they took from other people, but that's a different story. But they're so certain. And then when it doesn't work, they're like, well, you didn't do it right, you didn't practice enough. Right? You didn't follow the instruction. Or, well, that's in the next course. For only $10,999, I will now teach you the secret to unlocking. Yeah, so, you know, so there is all of that. But can we support our body's healing? Yes. Can you technically influence your body's acidity with practice? Yeah, of course. But it's not just that. It's like anytime you have somebody else's biome in yours, you are not completely in control. Mm-hmm. So, but you can up your immunity for that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, yeah. The quick and dirty answer is by not transcending it. By not transcending it. And so what I mean by that is, there's a Buddhist practice called feeding your demons. And in the feeding your demons practice, right, what you do is you actually pay attention to these voices, right? So the voice that says, what are you doing? What the hell is this? Again, you know, that's a voice that has been disowned. And typically the voice that's disowned, that makes you feel sorry for yourself, is the voice that needs to be fed, and fed with kindness and love and care, where instead of going, what the fuck are you doing? Why is this happening again? Now you have to deal with this again. You go, I hear you. There are still things we want to attend to. I'm with you. I'm an adult now. I can deal with this. You can relax. I got it, right? That's the feeding of the demon. It's not a demon. It's a small child, like a small person, small child voice that in a time where you had nothing else available was useful. And so when you try and transcend those voices, they get louder and louder, as a matter of fact, because they feel like they need to protect you. Yeah. So what you do is the opposite of of, like we were saying, you do it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. Thanks for showing me there's still stuff. Of course there's still stuff. It's not a problem. I got it. I got tools now. I have people I'm working with. I'm tending to it. You don't need to do this all by yourself. Right? And that's exactly what you want to do, right? You want to touch your body. You want to literally go, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. Like, it's okay. I got you. You talk to that part as if it's a small child, because it is a small child. And so when you neglect that part of you, it will become louder. Yeah. Because it sees its purpose in warning you. And you have to relieve it of its purpose by providing security. You're welcome.